Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mama Wears Athleisure. I am your host, Mariela de Santiago, a first time mom. We focus on all things mom with tips to help make life easier and more organized for all you mamas out there. Hi, everyone. So, today we are going to talk about sleep and sleep regressions, which I know is a huge, huge topic because every baby goes through them. And if you're a first time mom, it's something that you probably don't even realize until you're like, why is my baby all of a sudden not sleeping? That was my case. So we have somebody that's here to share all about that. So go ahead. I'm going to hand it over to you, Shelly, if you don't mind telling us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Sure. My name is Shelly Taft. I am an IBCLC and sleep coach outside of Boston, Massachusetts. And I have a busy private practice where I help babies eat and families sleep, basically.
That is great because it's something we all need, right?
Mhm.
Well, let's start off with just kind of keeping it basic. What is a sleep regression? You hear about this all the time. Babies go through it. I feel like I keep hearing, I haven't done my research yet, but I keep hearing that my toddler who just turned 2 is likely going to be hitting another sleep regression. So, what does this even mean?
So sleep regressions are periods of time where babies tend to regress in their sleep. Like they might wake up more often or have shorter naps. And often this runs along with other symptoms of regression, such as fussiness, eating more than usual, things like that. And I just want to point out that sleep regressions are not a hard and fast rule. They typically happen around certain times. 3 to 4 months is a common time. 8 to 9 months, 12 months, 18 months, and 24 months are the biggest ones. That doesn't mean that your baby is going to go through a regression at those times exactly or even at all. But it does mean that when we do see these regressions, that's the general pattern that they follow.
Why do they happen?
Well, there can be a number of reasons. First, one of the first things that you want to try to do if you think your baby is having a sleep regression is to identify the reasons. Because while most babies have sleep regression because they're going through a growth spurt, and when that happens, I like to refer to it as a brain progression rather than a sleep regression. So around that 3 to 4 month mark, your baby's going through a big eternal leap where they're learning new things about the world that they didn't know about beforehand. And that can be really overwhelming and keep them up at night. Or if they start crawling, they might regress in sleep because they've done all this new exciting movements and they want to go over them in their brain. So when we're looking at a regression and it happening around those times where we know that the babies are going through a milestone, that is very common. And we often call those again, those brain progressions. But sleep regressions can happen at other times too. It can happen because your baby is teething or they're sick or there's been some kind of change or disruption in their normal routine or schedule or life. Like maybe they're going to daycare for the first time, or you and your family just took a trip and so they've been traveling a lot. Those can also cause sleep regressions. And then another sleep regression can happen when, if you've been following a certain sleep plan or a certain sleep routine or a certain sleep schedule, and you kind of lax off a little bit because life gets busy, as it does for all of us. So maybe you don't follow the sleep routine as well as you were, and they start to regress. So we need to figure out why your baby is having a sleep regression and kind of narrow it down between those reasons.
What are some common symptoms that we see? So I love that you actually just mentioned the timeline because anytime my son would all of a sudden stop sleeping, I would go over to this app and look at the leaps. And then I was like, oh, okay. Now I kind of know what he's going through. But I didn't even know about leaps until after I had my baby, and everyone kept talking about these different apps with leaps. So,
Mhm.
with that, what are the symptoms?
When babies are going through some sort of milestone leap, they're often very clingy, a little bit more fussy. They want to eat more often, especially if they're being breastfed. And then the sleep factor is a huge one in those sleeps where they might have been going like 5 or 6 hour stretches at night, and all of a sudden they're going every 1 to 2 hours at night. And they're not always waking up because they're hungry, but they're waking up because they have a need.
I love that you said that because I feel like I hear so many moms that are like, I don't know what's going on. They've been waking up so much. They normally sleep for 6 hours. And it just makes you question yourself as like a parent, like, what am I doing wrong? What's going on? Are they teething? You go through like all of these questions that you can't even answer, right? So this is so, so
Mhm.
helpful. And how long do they typically last?
That's going to depend on the baby. And it's also going to depend on the reason why. So let's say your baby's having a sleep regression because they're sick, right? So probably the sleep regression is going to continue until they're feeling better, maybe a little bit longer as you get things kind of back on track. If it's because they're going through a milestone, that's really going to depend on that's really individual up to the baby. Sometimes it can be a week, sometimes it can be a month. It's just kind of all up in the air. If it's happening because you've been traveling or there's been another big change in your life, as soon as you kind of like settle into a new routine, if it's a permanent change, or you go back to your old routine, if it's a temporary change, that's when you usually see the regression kind of go away and things get back on track. But it can really depend. And when I'm working with clients for sleep, I tell them like I wish I had a crystal ball where I could just look and tell you like your baby's going to get back on track with sleep at this time. But oftentimes we can't. And sometimes we don't even know why they're having a sleep regression. You could go through the checklist. Oh, baby's not sick, baby's not teething, there's big no change in our life. They're not at one of those times where they are having a developmental leap. And so at those points, when we can't just kind of figure out why the baby is having those regressions, it's all just trying to manage it and get things back on track as soon as possible, but you don't really know when that's going to happen.
Are you ready to dive deep into the ebbs and flows of motherhood from preconception to postpartum and everything in between? Hi, I'm Hannah Gill, VBAC mom, doula, birth educator, and host of Motherhood Flow. Join me as we explore empowering birth stories, personal insights, and expert interviews covering topics like VBAC preparation, pregnancy wellness, and navigating the joys and challenges of motherhood. Whether you're preparing for your own journey of becoming a mom, wanting to learn more about VBAC, or you're looking for support and inspiration along the way, Motherhood Flow has you covered. This is your space to walk through birth and motherhood on your terms, ensuring you're not just going with the flow, but being an active participant in your own story. Subscribe to Motherhood Flow now on your favorite podcast platform.
That's tough. But at
Yes.
least at least you know that you'll get through it. I promise, moms, you will get through it. We all do.
Mhm.
What can we
Yep.
do? What can we do as parents to support them during this time?
Well, you want to remember that infant sleep is rarely linear to begin with. So it is often 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or sideways or upside down, or whatever, depending on what's going on. So again, you want to start by identifying the reason for the step back if you can. So if it is because they're ill or they're teething, you want to address those symptoms directly, and that alone should help them sleep more comfortably and get back on track with their sleep. If you are already on a sleep plan that you've been working on with your baby, you might have to take a step back. And by that, I mean, like, let's say you've been working on weaning off contact naps, for example, and you've gotten to the step in the plan where you're able to transfer your baby and shush them to sleep in the crib and they stay asleep. Whereas, step two, the previous step before that was getting them to transfer to the crib. You might have to take that step back where you're going back to rocking them to sleep and then transferring them asleep in the crib instead of laying them down to sleep and shushing and patting them to sleep. So sometimes we don't want to throw the whole sleep plan out the window and completely forget about it, but we might have to take a step back until the regression is over and then work towards the next step again.
I also have a question from a listener. So Cynthia, who is has a 2-year-old, just turned 2 2 months ago. her toddler has been skipping naps at the age of 2. Are there any reasons why maybe these naps are being skipped? Is it related to a regression? Can it be?
It can be. Sometimes it's not actually a regression, but a sign that the child or baby is ready to make changes in their sleep schedule. Maybe they're skipping the nap because they're ready to skip that nap and they're ready to drop a nap. What I would look at is for a 2-year-old is look at the total number of sleep in a 24-hour period. And then I follow the National Sleep Foundation's guidelines. And then if your toddler is, if you're trying to get your toddler, for example, to sleep 15 hours in a 24-hour period, but they really only need 12, trying to get them to take that second or that third nap is going to be really hard if they just are not tired enough, or if they're getting too much sleep to begin with.
And at that age, they should still be getting one nap, likely.
One nap, some still take 2, but it really depends on the kid. And it depends on how much overnight sleep they're getting as well. So that's why I like to start with like a 24-hour snapshot and then work backwards from there.
Yeah, that's hard because when kids drop a nap, oh man, it really changes your schedule as a mom that you were not expecting. And finally, my last question, do you have any other tips, suggestions, or recommendations?
I think sleep regressions require a lot of patience and being gentle with your baby or your toddler, but also with yourself. And like I said, it's okay to take a step back from whatever sleep routine and sleep plan that you have been doing, but don't throw it completely out the window, and try to get back on track as soon as possible. And just follow your baby's leads. I don't do any sort of cried out sleep methods. So if your toddler or your baby is sick and they're wanting to be held and snuggled by you more than they would normally, I would go ahead and go with the flow and go and do that for them. And then once they're feeling better, get back on track. So you want to have some flexibility where you're meeting their needs and you're meeting the needs that they're waking up for, but you don't want to throw the whole sleep plan out the window and just kind of create complete chaos. For example, if your baby has not bed shared with you in a long time, it doesn't mean you automatically want to pull them back into the bed when you've already worked really hard to get them into their own sleep space. But maybe you sit next to them when they wake up and stay with them until they fall back asleep.
To just kind of find an alternative that's still similar, but
Mm-hmm.
not going backwards.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking time to talk to us about sleep regression. I know this is always a very, very big topic especially when moms or parents are going through those sleep regressions and you're just already sleep deprived. You think that you finally have it figured out. And then it's like, just kidding. You don't have it figured out just yet. But we will get there.
100%.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Tune in next week for our next episode. You can find us on Instagram for more updates and tips. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts and give us a review if you like us.